Hey, what's going on, guys? This is JT. I'm coming at you. Increasing credit limits will put you in a bind. I got this video from a clip from the Stansberry Report. Daniela Cambone. Daniela Cambone talked to Gregory Manarino. The name of the video that I'll put in the description below is called Banks Increasing Credit Limits at Rapid Pace to Keep You in a Chokehold. That's a hell of a first line, right? I want to show you this clip, and this clip will talk about the 3 points that I want to discuss in this video. All right, let's go.
Central banks have one product. Their product is debt. How central banks really want to combat inflation, and they're doing so by raising rates. It's a farce. The matter is, people are pulling their cash out of these accounts because they're trying to make ends meet. What are they doing? They're borrowing beyond their eyeballs here. With regard to their debt burdens, household debt, consumer debt, all the stuff we talked about in the past is coming to light. And everything that I'm talking about here is also going to come to light at one point, but it's too late.
To discuss the talking points further, I called on my good friend Darrel Dominic for the Money Level Show and to hear his thoughts on the video. Okay, here's Darrel. Darrel, what's going on with you, brother?
Hey man, it's going pretty good, man. Just trying to survive these markets in turbulent times. You know, the goal is to survive as best as you can during these times when the Fed's raising interest rates and market dynamics are changing. So you know, you don't want to get wiped out.
Most definitely, man. When I saw this clip, I saw it from, I like watching Stansberry Report with Daniela, but this one kind of grabbed hold of me because when I saw banks are increasing credit limits at a rapid pace to keep you in a chokehold, it was kind of graphic. And it made me think about exactly what the central banks are doing to keep us as consumers. But the 3 points that was brought by Gregory, I wanted to stress here. Number one, the first thing he said, the central bank's products is debt. The second point that he created in that video was the central bank's combat inflation by raising the rates is farce. The whole demand is to kill the demand of the dollar and crush the consumer. And the third thing he pointed out was that people are pulling money out the banks in their money market report. I want to play the video one more time, and I want to come back and discuss it. Okay?
Yeah.
Central banks have one product. Their product is debt. The more debt they issue to the world, the stronger they become. Hence, how central banks really want to combat inflation, and they're doing so by raising rates. It's a farce. Okay, raising rates is meant to kill demand, and henceforth crush the consumer. The money supply. What are they doing? They're inflating the money supply. You got Fed presidents like Bullard telling people, "Oh, look, the money supply is contracting." You can see that because people are pulling cash out of their bank accounts. People are pulling cash out of their money market accounts. Two metrics that are utilized to measure the global money supply. But the fact of the matter is, people are pulling their cash out of these accounts because they're trying to make ends meet. What are they doing? They're borrowing beyond their eyeballs here with regard to their debt burdens, household debt, consumer debt, all the stuff we talked about in the past is coming to light. And everything that I'm talking about here is also going to come to light at one point, but it's too late. People are not waking up fast enough, unfortunately.
All right, Darrel, we heard what Gregory was stating. Is the central bank's main product debt?
Main product debt. I mean, yeah. I mean, pretty much they finance our government spending. So they buy bonds from the Treasury, and the Treasury has a budget for how they spend the money that they receive from pretty much like the central banks. And then also, I mean, you have other investors in there, like you have other sovereign nations that buy, you know, U.S. bonds, and you have consumers that buy bonds, banks buy bonds, but the Federal Reserve is the biggest financer of that debt, and we're currently running about a 1.5 trillion deficit, budget deficit per year. And so, so pretty much their main product is debt. Is they create reserves out of thin air to buy the debt so that we can keep the system running. And so, yeah,
we as consumers carry debt. We carry debt in the form of mortgages, car notes, and our daily consumptions that we deal with. And one of the things that kind of struck me was that is it is it just destined that we carry debt, that we never become debt free? So, what do you think on that topic?
As far as consumers, I mean, I wouldn't say it's destined that we become that it's not possible to become debt free.
Hmm.
Obviously, with banks increasing credit limits and things like that. Which, I mean, there's been different reports on like how much they're actually increasing and who's increasing it or what. Because pretty much when banks don't lend out money, then we have liquidity
Hmm.
pretty much freezes, and which can be bad for markets. Um, but yeah, so like, I mean, it just kind of just depends on, I think, when you get to the consumer level of how we position ourselves, in accordance to our financial discipline. um, Sometimes we get a credit card, they raise the credit limit goes up, however many $1,000, and then we spend more. So we do have a consumption problem
Hmm.
here in the United States. And so, but I mean, people that live more frugal, that have more financial discipline, tend to be better off, and are able to be more wise in these kind of environments. But yeah, like I think that, I mean, just looking at debt in general for consumers, I mean, that just, there's so many factors in there. I mean, you have cultural dynamics, you have racial dynamics, you have different communities of, who can afford what, who can have access to what, and everything. So like, there's so many like nuances that go within that, but ultimately it boils down to just our financial education and our discipline and everything.
I'm in this video, and people who want to see the main video with the whole 9 minute clip from the Stansberry Report, it mentioned that people are receiving credit limits like crazy. Banks are extending credit limits $10,000, $15,000. Do you think this is in this time people definitely need it? But do you think it's one of the most irresponsible things to do if the consumer is not disciplined?
As far as like the banks doing it or the consumer doing it?
Well, the consumer is basically getting an extension of credits when they
Yeah.
already probably in a hole. The banks really, I don't think, care, because as long as they, keep the banks going because of the debt, they want to make sure people paying interest and stuff like that. Do you think it's an irresponsible thing to do during this time frame to gain more debt in the form of credit cards?
Yeah, it's irresponsible. I mean, obviously, some people are in survival mode, so
Hmm.
if they've, increased their lifestyle during the last 2 years when we had a lot of liquidity in the system, and then now they're fighting to keep up with that same lifestyle, you may see credit use go up as well in that scenario. Um, but I think that ultimately, when consumers are consuming more, I honestly think debt can be addicting.
Yeah.
I think that, we buy things that we don't need. I mean, Rick Rule has talked about multiple times, like, that we need to get our financial household in order, and be able to spend less than what we earn, and
Hmm.
invest the difference and such. And so, like, people have to really make some decisions as far as like, how they are going to, move forward and cutting, some of the consumption out that we've experienced over the last 2 years. I mean, just think about it: PPP loans, stimulus
Right.
checks, child tax credits, all those things like that put a lot of extra money in people's pockets, and a lot of people went and spent that money. And then now you have inflation, where you have the cost of living
Hmm.
rising and things like that,
Right.
and many people weren't prepared for it.
I mean, most definitely. We just got the numbers back, so we saw that the interest rate, the numbers, and we also realized that they're the job numbers. You said people are, less people are unemployed, more people are working, and we know that that's one way for people to garner more money, instead of taking these credit cards that do put them in a chokehold or a bind. So with the job numbers, do you believe that we definitely have an increase, or do you think these numbers are fudge?
So some of them, like, it's very nuanced with how they put them out. I think some of them can have like people with multiple jobs and stuff like that. So we don't have
That's
like
what I
a
said.
we don't have
Mhm,
a clear picture, clear number.
mhm,
But employment is relatively still high, compared to um, where the Fed wants it to be to actually destroy, demand. Um, but yeah, like I think that it's kind of, those numbers can be kind of fishy at times because like it doesn't factor in like, oh well, say JT's working two jobs,
yeah, most definitely.
things like that. But we do know like that um, payrolls have increased and such since inflation started. Like many companies started raising their wages and such to help people with inflation, and so that also played a picture in kind of that picture in that dynamic as well. So
Gregory made a point. Central bank combats inflation by raising rates. He believes that is farce. He believes that it's to kill the demand of the dollar and crush the consumer. Would you go as that far to say that basically rate, said, did he say, kill the demand of the dollar and crush the consumer? Um, that's what made me think that he was moving towards debt, making all consumers like debt slaves in some form. You know, we all feel the pinch of the market. We go to the supermarket and we realize everything we buy is definitely more expensive, gas and
Mhm.
all types that we consume, and we're using our credit cards to pay some of these things. Hey, because we're trying to loosen the tight hold, right?
Mhm.
But would you think he's in the right term to saying to crush the consumer? Would it be that deadly of words?
um, I mean, I would rephrase it differently, but I mean, ultimately, that's what uh, demand is. Like, demand is the consumer.
Hmm.
So the Fed cannot control supply. So whenever there's supply shortages, due to like the pandemic and such, like the Fed can't go and print oil. They can't go and print chicken. They can't go and print, houses, so that we have more supply,
Hmm.
so that it can match demand and be more in balance and be cheaper. So the only way that the only tool that they really can use is to destroy demand. And so destroying demand means they're selling like some of their assets off of their balance sheet, which has affected the markets. We saw the markets take a huge dip. So when you lose a huge amount of your net worth in the markets, that destroys demand, right?
Hmm.
Because you're not able to go consume as much as and contribute more, ideally contribute more to inflation. Um, so that's one way. And then raising interest rates. I mean, when you have to pay higher interest on your
Hmm.
debts, that money's going to banks. That money's going to other entities. It's not going into your own pocket to where you can actually spend more money. And so
Hmm.
um, it definitely affects the consumer. I mean, people are having to pay more for houses now. I mean, with mortgage rates at 5, 6, 7%. Um, so people have to pay more for a house,
Hmm.
which ultimately that does bring back some of the housing prices and such. So we've seen asset prices take a fall, during this time because of the Fed raising interest rates. And so ultimately it's supposed to hurt demand, but the issue is that we still have supply forces that are continues to push inflation up while the Fed is trying to push demand down.
They definitely to persuade the consumer to stop buying. Basically, that's the main
Yeah,
thing, right? All right.
yeah.
The third point that Gregory made was people are pulling money out of their banks and money market accounts, definitely to make ends meet. This the most natural thing to do. So, can you explain the importance of building a layer of protection before you pull all your money out or go into the money markets like emergency account? What are your thoughts on doing that before you drain drain the bank accounts?
Yeah, I think just having being diversified. Obviously, different assets. Some people do gold, Bitcoin or whatever, but being diversified and having cash, physical cash that you can use. Like, you never know, like, what can happen with a banking system or whatever, to where and you still need to make ends meet. You still need to transact in your normal life. So having physical cash somewhere, is a part of diversity as well. But ultimately, I mean, people are pulling money out of the banks and such, when really, like, I mean, we're seeing the highest amount on our capital that we've seen in a long time. For a while, banks were paying 0.001%, on your savings, and
Right.
on your investments. Now you're seeing like CD accounts at 3.75%. You're seeing, you know, some of the cash accounts, like with some of the brokerages, 4%. You're seeing more like where you can actually park money and receive a decent return. However, the issue is that your purchasing power is still being diminished by inflation, because when inflation is at 6.5%, or whatnot, and you're getting paid 4%, that's 2.5% of your money that's being sucked away. And so
Right.
it's kind of like, it's one of those things where I think that there are opportunities to be able to make more money on your money, as far as like whether that's high dividend paying stocks or some of the bonds, ETFs. I mean, paying 7% or whatnot. So I mean, where you can at least survive and escape, kind of go, not necessarily unscathed, but just like be able to go without being as much impacted. I mean, the goal is to lose as less money as possible.
Right.
And so, but I mean, everybody's situation is different. So people gotta take money out of their accounts and take care of the bills and
Gotta do what you
whatever
gotta
comes
do.
up. Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. However, the importance of, like the last 2 years, for me and, my channel is talking about building those assets that what are valuables that you can buy and that you can sell later, whether that be, gold or collector art or whatever. Like, you have to store value. And
Right.
so, I mean, and I found myself in that position too, like where it's like, okay, yeah, I stored a lot of value up in these assets here. Now I can start to liquidate some of it, in not even at like a huge loss, but just able to liquidate, what you've, stored your value in. And so that's kind of just a way that I save.
Right. That's a beautiful thing about precious metals, is the ability to put our money and store it away. Most people don't look at it as being an investment, but it is the commodity that we can store our wealth and lock it up for safety. And a lot of people take the money out the banks to do so. But Darrel, thank you so much, man, for taking out these 3 points from this Stansberry Report video of Daniela Cambone and Gregory Manarino talking about increasing credit limits at rapid pace to keep you in a chokehold. Man, I appreciate you. I knew to call the right person, because I would have bumbled and stumbled all over this topic without you, man. But I appreciate
Yeah.
you, and I'll hit you up in a later time. Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm glad to just kind of exercise. It's been a little while since I uploaded on my channel, but I've been, just kind of the background consuming knowledge still. But
Most
yeah, I'm
definitely.
glad to be able to be that resource.
Guys, you see the ticker below, the Money Level Show. He has talked to some of the greatest minds in the macroeconomic world, and he has a great channel with hundreds of videos. Go check him out, Money Level Show. I'll make sure I put his link in the description below. Darrel, thanks a lot, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk soon.
Peace. All right, guys, it's JT Corn Rings. Thanks for joining me for another live stream in the day. I know it's not talking about corn rings, but it's talking about an important subject that we all need to discuss to understand our money, how to keep it, and how we need to discipline ourselves so we don't get caught in the chokehold of credit and these high limits that the central banks and banks around are doing. All right, guys, take care, and I'll check you out in the next video. Leave a comment, like the video, share it. watch the video. It helps with my watch hours. All right. Talk to you soon.